Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Today I don't want to give a talk where I have to get up and write on the board a lot. I'm actually feeling very sore today. But I thought this might be a good time to go through this list of training items and talk specifically about each one, because within that list there's a whole lot of things that I would like you to do as teachers in the school. And many of these things, they're not just suggestions about what would be nice. I mean, they are actually things I really do want you all to do in the school. And so you should be looking at them that way, as not just to hear and think, well, that's a good idea, but to plan how you actually do it.
And just a little bit more on the exams for that personalized system of instruction. What I'd like you to do is, after you start doing some in the different classes, let me have a look at them, so I can be sure. But one thing that you always want to do, you see, is for each exam, you want it to cover as widely as possible. You know, you don't want to take several questions off of one page, or and if there's going to be 5 questions, you don't want to take 2 or 3 of them off of one page if there's 10 pages. So the idea being to have what's called a statistically random selection, and it's really very accurate, a random selection like this. That if, say for instance, in 10 pages there's 100 possible bits of information, and you pick any 5 and ask someone if they can answer those 5. If they can answer those 5, it's highly probable they could answer almost all of the 100. You know, I mean, you really can't get, just statistically it would be almost impossible for someone to have only learned the 5 that you happen to ask. See, so probability makes it so that that's a sampling technique. You don't have to make long exams, which is very nice, because you're going to be doing an awful lot of small exams in the class. And hopefully later on we'll have some more volunteer help. We'll ask for from some of the education departments, maybe if any students would like to come and do a practicum or something, so you can also get some help. And then we'll just use this list as something here. The first one on the list: mention Allah as many times every day as necessary, so children can see the relationship of everything to Allah. Now, one of the things I've noticed because I've actually, in one large Islamic school, I sat in every single classroom for 1 hour. I don't know, it was like 30 classrooms or something, but I made the effort to sit in every single classroom for an hour and see what all of the teachers were doing. And I never one time heard a teacher teaching other subjects other than Islamic subjects mention anything at all about Allah. Just zero mention, right? And if you consider the concept of zikir, which is remembrance of Allah, there are many, many ways to do zikir. I mean, you know, there are really formal ways, but really, any time you even think of Allah, actually that is a very short zikir, right? It is remembrance of Allah. And one of the things that we want the children to end up with is, you remember, see, a lot of these things that I want us to do, they go back to the original hypothesis that the Khalifa project is based on. The first part in particular, the positive, accurate, and motivational worldview. So we want to impart or give to these children a worldview that will be helpful to them. Remember I said before that the way we act is dependent on the way we view the world. So we want to give the children a worldview that is, what were the three characteristics? I just, positive, no, positive, accurate, and motivational, yeah. Which is basically Islam, you see. It is very accurate because it's right in every aspect. It's positive. I mean, it's an extremely positive way of viewing the world, you know. It's always saying that, I'm going to use a very general word here, it's saying that the nice way is always the best way. No, I mean, wouldn't you agree that this is what Islam says? That in absolutely anything you do, the nice way is the best way. Sometimes you're allowed to do things other than the nicest way, but ideally, the nice way is always the best way in Islam. And so it's very positive, so it's very accurate, very positive, and motivational. I mean, Allah in the Quran says things to us, both what Allah has told us, how special our role is, and what He has promised us we could have. You know, Allah essentially in the Quran, He doesn't say exactly in the same words that I'm using, but says that if you do what it takes to have a right world, I will ensure you have a right world. But if you wait for me to do it, you won't get it. So that is like that's the overall philosophy of Islam. That a virtual heaven on earth, paradise on earth is virtual. We can't have paradise on earth because paradise will be much nicer than anything we can have in the physical world. But a virtual paradise, meaning a society that is good in every way. And so that is actually promised to us that it is within our capability to have. And that's an extremely motivational and positive thing. So this is the worldview that we want the children to have. And one of the things critical to this worldview is a really strong and close and loving relationship with Allah. I mean, you can't really get committed to all of the things Islam promises if you don't have a relationship with Allah. So we want the children to see. Now, I'm going to say something here everyone may not agree with, because it has to do with Sufi knowledge, and not everybody likes Sufi knowledge. But according to Sufi, the final, the highest level of understanding and relationship with Allah would be said to be to know there is nothing but Allah. That would be like the ultimate. To know there is nothing but Allah, you have to see where Allah is not just is everywhere, because that's not the right way to put it. Allah is involved in everything that happens. And so, in school, we tell the children all sorts of different kinds of knowledge. And as you're telling children math and science and language and arithmetic and what's math? Well, all the different things children learn in school, there are like lots and lots of facts involved, involving things like math involves numbers, right? Well, why do numbers work the way that they work, right? I mean, even say, for instance, 2 + 2 = 4. There is mathematically, among mathematicians, in mathematical theory, there's a question as, why should 2 and 2 = 4? You know, I mean, it's so obvious that it does that we don't question it. But mathematically, it is a question. Why should things add up to be what they are? And mathematicians have not been able to come up with an answer to something like this. But the answer really is because that's how Allah made the world to be. And I mean, see, what if numbers at different times added up to different things? The world would be a real disaster. So we want the children to see, in science, when we're talking about, you know, how trees grow from seeds. Well, you don't just tell them, you know, well, the seed has within it a DNA, and it tells how to organize the material, the nutrients that the plant takes up from the earth and make it into a tree. That you want to say that Allah has made this. Allah has put this message, a tiny message in a tiny seed that can end up being a huge tree. See, you want to always be saying to the children, Allah did this, Allah did that. This is how Allah does it. So the children start to, in everything that they think about, they are thinking about whatever they think about, they are thinking of Allah doing it. And this is actually, for older kids, I do recommend what I call zikr for students, where even if the teachers don't do that, you see, because often the teachers don't do it. So, but the students can do it themselves, even if the teachers don't. And what I recommend to the children, to the students, is that while you're sitting in class and the teachers are telling you, every time a teacher tells you a new fact, you say to yourself, "Oh, this is really wonderful. Allah did this thing that I just learned." So you say it to yourself, even if the teacher isn't saying it. But for the younger kids, it's very hard to get them to do that, and to even understand the concept. So for the younger kids, you need to just say it to them. And they need to hear it over and over and over. And it's very easy. I mean, you only need to, in what you say to the children, you only need to add 2 or 3 words to the sentence. And you put Allah back into their remembrance. So for all of you, no matter what class you teach, what subject you teach, I would like lots and lots of mentions of Allah. And I personally, I think it's really strange that in Islamic schools you never hear Allah mentioned in class. When we look at the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, everything that happened, he would immediately mention Allah about it, right?
Yes.
Like if he got a new item of clothing, he would immediately talk about, oh, this shirt, it's really wonderful. Allah has given me this beautiful shirt, and I'll wear it, thankful to Allah. So just in the ongoing conversation, and I'm sure the companions did a lot of this also. But today, I think our Muslim Ummah has been very influenced not only by secular materialism, but by the processes of the religion of Christianity. And Christianity very much separates religious time from the rest of your life. I mean, for Christians, it seems to be pretty much okay to, I mean, like you're really very pious if you go to church every Sunday. And if you don't remember God in between, that's not a problem, because you're going to church every Sunday, so you've done your full duty. And so to Christians, the way their religion is, it doesn't seem to include remembrance of God all the time. There's no real concept in Christianity of that. But in Islam, we do have that concept, but we've lost it. We've lost the practice to some degree. And I think it's because somehow or other we start to practice Islam as the Christians practice Christianity. And that kind of thing is a real worry. So we really need to get back to lots and lots of remembrance of Allah. So that's why we have the first one there. So and it's a little bit arbitrary to put a number, but just so to make sure everybody remembers to do it, I think it might be okay to say a number of times, to try, just because if you don't sort of plan to do it a certain number of times at least, maybe you'll forget to do it at all.
Can we just say Alhamdulillah, MashaAllah, and all that?
Well, but that doesn't actually relate it specifically to the kids. I mean, so then they hear about Allah, but it doesn't relate Allah to certain things. We want them to view the world so that they know everything that is happening around them is being done by Allah. And so I would suggest 3 times per class. We try for 3 times per class to try and find some way to bring Allah into it. Does anyone feel that would be too difficult to do, or? See, I mean, it will. One of the things why I want to put a number, I know it will feel awkward at first. See, because all of us have developed certain communication patterns, right? And as soon as you try to communicate other than your normal communication pattern, in your mind, you know it feels awkward. If you've ever tried, specifically, oh, I'm going to act a different way, then you feel awkward acting that way. So until you get comfortable with it, and then you just do it all the time, and you feel as comfortable, and that actually does become your communication pattern. And eventually, you probably find yourself doing it not just in the classroom, but in talking with other people. And maybe they'll think you're a little strange, but that's okay. If you're strange in the path of Allah, that's okay. Yeah, sure. Strange only means different than the average. And sometimes when speaking to the children, use terms of endearment. Does everybody know what terms of endearment means?
Yes.
Endearment means, like, call them darling and dear and sweetheart, and because actually often when I see the kids at one particular school where they know me very well, but when I see them I say, oh, Assalamu alaikum, dear little Khalifah of Allah. And in the beginning I could tell they thought it was a bit weird I called them that, but now they are very used to it, and I can tell they like to be called that. So we don't need to put a number on this, but try everybody, when you're dealing with the kids, every once in a while, when it is appropriate, you use terms of endearment. Because terms of endearment bring closeness. See, if somebody hears you calling them names that you only call people you really care about, then of course they feel like you are very close with them. And we want the children to feel very close with you. I mean, there was a time in Islam when teachers were revered and held in such high esteem by students that there was almost nobody more important in the world. Teachers were like the most important people almost in their lives. And to a degree, other than parents, it really should be that way, because teachers are giving the children something that is really huge, and also teachers are shaping what the life of the child will eventually be. I mean, it's amazing, like how in the West teachers deny all this social responsibility with kids. And they say, no, my only responsibility is to teach the subject I teach. But whether they take the responsibility or not, they are influencing the children's life path. And so, since we're going to be influencing the children very heavily anyway, we should do it consistently and have a goal in mind. And your relationship with the child and your time with the child, you need to see as a shaping process. Right? And every little thing you do with a child is a step towards something. So you want to have that something that it's a step toward in mind. And the goal is that we'll be working toward with them is that they be Muslims of excellent character in every way. including academically. And one thing that I think is important, number 3 here, warmly greet the children every day when they arrive at school. You know, usually when kids get to school, I mean, nobody pays any attention to them. They just come on in and there they are. But sometimes, like small things, when you're starting, since they're going to be there most of the day, you want to sort of set a, what you call it, a precedent or set to start a mindset, right? So if when the child gets to the school, the first thing that happens is the teachers greet them warmly. So right away, in the beginning of their school day, they have nice feelings about school and teachers. And so it's all, these are small things, right? But part of the idea of what we want to do in the school, we want to put all of the small things together. Because you put all of these small things together, each one of them increases the impact, positive impact, that the school will be able to have on the kids. And then number 4, give dependable older children responsibility for specific younger children. So what I would like all of you to be looking out for is which of the older kids in the school are very responsible. By very responsible, I would mean they are well behaved, they have a nice attitude, they work hard, they have good akhlaq. And if you can find a few kids like that, we want them to be assigned several younger children who they become like special friend or big brother or big sister to. And that every day they talk with, you know, between classes and on the playground or whatever, they talk to these other kids and they become special friends to them. And that their job is to be a positive influence on the younger children. You know, like say for instance, if someone their behavior's not so good, or they don't work so hard in class, or they don't seem very interested in learning, or maybe they don't speak nicely to other people, then if somebody is their older friend, a friend several years older, they are very likely to listen to this person if the child several years older is saying to them, you know, it's really so much nicer if you never say mean words to other kids, and you always, you know, speak to them nicely. And you know, that's really important. But when said by a friend who's a few years older, for little kids, this has a very big impact. And also it can be put to the older kids as this is part of their second responsibility as Khalifah of Allah, to help others be good. Because we're going to have a lot of stress to the children, we haven't got to that yet, but about being Khalifah of Allah. So in the morning when we have a flag raising ceremony, perhaps after they sing the national song, we might have them you know, do the Khalifa oath every day. And just say, you know, some little thing to, you know, as you go into class, you know, okay, everyone remember all day long you're Khalifa, okay? And just little things like that to prompt them. Because we want to use that as a method to get the children to first to do all that is right, and then to really want to do all that is right. So they get lots of reward for it. So anyway, everyone needs to be on the lookout for the children who would be, the older children who would be good examples to the younger ones. And number 5, teach the children to think logically by showing them simple examples. So we actually, and this is something I feel that in the world, I feel like there's really not that much logical thinking goes on. I mean, really severely so. You know, when I see, watch analysts on CNN and politicians talking and then people discussing things and the ideas that people hold. So many people either say things or believe things that are clearly illogical. You know, I mean, I mentioned before a concept called necessary logical implications. Certain things are true, other things also must be true. Now, if you don't know logic, it's impossible to know what the logical implications will be, because you won't see the connection between things. And one of the things logic teaches you is the connection between things. And it's something that sometimes I find a little frustrating. You might know people and interact with them, and there's things that are really clear from what has gone on they should know, but they didn't do what I refer to as connect the dots. I don't know if you've heard that term, but in English, to connect the dots is to put all the bits of information together and know what is said. Because so often in the world, there's information right there in front of you, but it doesn't say directly what it says. It's in 3 or 4 different bits. And if you don't see a connection between those bits, you'll never know what those bits say together. And the way the world, Allah's made the world, Allah has made the world so that everything is interconnected. Everything, absolutely everything is interconnected. So ultimately, there are relations between everything. So we want to teach the children to think logically. And maybe some of you, I don't know exactly how to teach children logic. I could probably teach children logic, but I don't have a particular curriculum in my mind or anything to teach children logic. But I would guess probably on the internet you could find some actual techniques of teaching children logic. But what I mean by teaching children logic, I'll just give an example. And probably by the time the children are 5 years old, they would be able to do this with ease. But so just take this as a representative example. If I had 3 cups upside down on a table, and I lift up one of the cups and I put something under it, and then I say to the child, and I point to one of the cups that I didn't put something under, and I say, is the marble under this cup? And when children are little, they don't even link in their mind a series of events, putting the thing under the cup and knowing what cup it is under later. So but at 5 years old, they should all be able to do that. I mean, that's a task for probably 2 and 3-year-olds. But that kind of thing. See, we want to set up situations. I'm sure on the internet, I've never looked for this, but I just feel sure there would be some way, if you looked up something like simple logical problems for children or something. Say, for instance, if you have a box and the children can't see what's in it, and you reach in and you pull out a blue ball, and then if you say to the child, okay, when I reach in here again, what is the most likely thing I will find? Does anyone know the answer? Yeah, blue ball. The only bit of evidence you have as what might be in the box is that there was a blue ball in the box. So although it can be a lot of other things, the most highly probable thing is another blue ball. See, I mean, it's getting that concept to the children that's important, that information tells you something. The information that when you reach in, you get a blue ball, it tells you a bit of information that doesn't make it sure at all, but it's the only bit of information you have to go on. And then a simple one, which is really part of math, is progression of numbers. You know, you say 2, 4, 6, 8, what's the next number? Now, does anybody know for sure what the next number is? Anybody know for sure? No, nobody knows for sure. It could be 2, 4, 6, 8, 20.
18.
You know, but the only logical choice to make is 10. But it's not necessarily 10, you see, because the sequence could go on. It could be 2, 4, 6, 8, 20, and then a series of numbers, 12, 14, 16, 18, 40. So these kind of things the children need to understand. And they also need to be told that things that they know tell them other things, you know, that you can put things together, you can put bits of knowledge together, and it can tell you other things. And hopefully on the internet we can find some ways to have simple logical problems like this. And I'm not sure what age children can get to the point where just think if this is true. Is it true all mammals have 4 legs? Do some mammals with less than 2 legs or less than 4 legs?
Yeah.
Which ones? Who?
It works, I don't know.
Let's not say 4 limbs. 4 limbs.
Yeah.
I think all mammals have 4 limbs. Does anything besides a mammal have 4 limbs? Okay, they do, of course, lizards and reptiles. Anyway, I was just trying to think of a simple logic. Does anyone know a simple logic like that? You know, all something have this. This particular one has this, therefore this is a. You know that simple logic?
All mammals give milk, regardless you have legs or don't have legs.
Yeah,
Feed your children with milk.
Yeah, but I think do any reptiles or
No,
amphibians do that?
no. Only
Okay.
mammal. Yeah. Even whales, yes.
Yeah, whales are mammals.
Yeah, they feed, they breastfeed. Yes.
Okay, yeah, no, that's probably true. Okay, so it has to do with you have one premise, then another premise. It's the simplest kind of logic, right? All mammals. Well, it's hard to make a question out of that.
Slippery, you want to slip if there's water on the floor, so if you see the slippery surface, you would slip.
Yeah, I mean, actually, even things like that, right, are really logic. You say to the children, if you walk on a floor and there's a puddle of water, what might happen if you step in that? Okay, so one of the logical possibilities is you're more likely to slip when you step in a puddle of water than walking on a dry floor. So, but anyway, however we do it, we want to find a way to teach the children to think logically, to understand logic. And by the, when the children get a bit older, we can actually teach them some simple formal logic. And there's also, and I don't know whether you can teach it at the level of Standard 3. Might have to be a bit older than that. But there's an area in logic called informal logical fallacies. And informal logical fallacies are about the ways people convince each other that something is true, but there's no validity to it. Like something that children do is like if they want to do something, they say, oh, but everybody's doing it. So say they want to watch MTV, and the parent says, no, I don't want you to watch MTV. So the child says, no, but everyone I know watches MTV. Now, this is actually, this gives no information as to whether or not watching MTV is right. You see, the implication is, since everybody watches MTV, MTV is okay to watch. But you can't logically say that. So, in informal logical fallacies, this is called a tu quoque argument, which means in Latin, you also. And a real example of it would be, say for instance, you're driving down the highway at 140 kilometers an hour, and a police car, is chasing you and pulls you over. And the policeman says, you were going 140 kilometers an hour. And you say to him, well, so were you. Like that makes it okay.
Yes.
I mean, that's an example of how really false that argument is. And it's just called a tu quoque argument. Anyway, there's a whole list of about 10 informal logical fallacies that people use. Say for instance, who's the famous soccer star from England? David Beckham. I don't know if he's still famous, but
On the way down.
he's probably on his way down. Because he's been famous for about 5 years, so fame doesn't last forever. Anyway, say for instance, you hear David Beckham eat some kind of breakfast food. So in advertising, part of advertising is to sort of say, well, somebody famous eats it, therefore it must be good. And just because someone famous eats it doesn't mean that it's good. These are the kind of, they're simple logical fallacies that go on in life that people trick other people into. One of the ones in arguments is to say to somebody, like say for instance you're losing an argument. You take one side of an argument. What if I want to say, but somebody might want to say, there's flying saucers coming to Earth and abducting humans. Yeah, UFOs. There's UFOs coming and abducting human beings, right? Taking them up and doing medical experiments on them. Now, there are people who believe that, right? Now, say for instance, somebody is arguing with you and they're really convinced they're right and that's happening. And you are giving them all sorts of logic to say, why, no, that's just impossible. And they see that they can't possibly win logically, right? That they can't argue. So that they can end up saying to you, well, you have to agree, though, that it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible, isn't it?
Possible.
So it's like, if you agree with them that it's possible, it's like, well, I've won the argument then, didn't I? You agreed with me. So if you can't get someone to agree that yes, it is the case, you get them to agree that it's possible. But possible doesn't mean much. See, according to the laws of physics, if I let go of this bottle, you would say it's a certainty it will fall to the floor, right? But according to the laws of physics, that's not true. Only the probability is very high. But technically, right, according to the laws of physics, it is technically true to say it is possible I can let go of this bottle and it won't fall to the floor, it will go up. Now, you'll never see that happen, right? It will never happen in reality. But because of the laws of physics, it is possible. It has to do with quantum uncertainty. If every subatomic particle making up this bottle were to make the same quantum position at the same time, it doesn't have to go down, it could go up, right? But, I mean, where the reality is, actually, every subatomic particle in this bottle isn't in this bottle all the time. Some of them are other distances from the bottle occasionally. I mean, this would actually be true, but the numbers are very small. So, but if you had to say yes or true false, is it possible you could let go of that bottle and it doesn't fall? The answer is true, as possible, but it means nothing about reality, because you could drop that bottle a billion times a day for a billion years, and it's going to fall to the ground. You see, so the argument that, well, it's possible, isn't it, means absolutely nothing about reality. It says absolutely nothing about reality. So these are tricks people use when they communicate with others. See, there's a lot of tricks in communication that people just end up using, and they don't realize that they're being used. But a lot of them are included in this class of logic called informal logical fallacies. Anyway, however we do it, we want to teach the children logic and to think logically so they can get the most out of the information they learn.
So, how do you give straight answer to a straight question by a student?
How to give a straight answer to a straight question.
But you feel that they are too young to learn something.
Oh. Yeah, on that question, it is the case with, as teachers, you'll occasionally get a question that you can tell that children are not prepared to understand the answer.
They want to know exactly what's the answer. I say, how do I want?
See, that's a particular class of questions.
My daughter is asking me, why you get married to my house? So I said, I like your house. She said, can I get married? Yes. But to get to the answer to yes, you have to think so many.
I mean, see, this is the problem with questions. Often there is a lot of, the final answer requires a whole lot of other information before you should get the final answer. I sometimes say to children that I could answer that question, but I don't really like to answer it now, because if I answer it now, the answer won't mean the same thing to you as it will later, when you get a bit older. The same answer I give you will mean something very different to you. And so if I tell you the answer now, maybe it would mislead you, and it would be better to have that question answered in a few years. You could possibly get out of it that way.
I have another one. When my second son passed away, my youngest was 3, and they were very close. Very close. So after that night, he was asking me, why did he die? Why we have to bury him? So I told him, Allah loves him. Allah said to rest, just go on sleeping, not do your homework, you don't have to study, you don't have to go to work, you just rest. So 3 days later, he came up and said, I think he's rested enough, let's go and dig him up. So it was like, oh.
So you might have at that point thought that was not really a good answer.
Yes. I mean, it might be good for slightly older children, but sometimes they see it not in perspective. They see it exactly as we say it.
See, like the answer to your daughter, sure, technically the answer is, if her question is, can I get married? Yes, the answer is yes, of course she can get married, but not now. I assume she's young. How old is she?
9.
Oh, okay, so she can't get married now. And there's a whole lot of things that she should understand about the process of getting married before she just gets a yes, because if you just give a yes, it's like giving permission.
But once I said the word, you can get married. I was ordered by no. Don't even mention the word married to your kid.
Yes.
Yes.
So I guess everyone's just going to have to use their judgment on to whether or not, and also sometimes, in the first place, you should never resort to an untrue answer. You know? But that doesn't mean you always have to give the full true answer.
These kind of things are being discussed. Children watch movies and peers talk about it. So they do have these kind of questions, and my children also ask me, and I just tell them they should get married at the right age. So if they're not the right age, they can't get married, and they should be thinking about it right now because they don't know how to think about it. So when they're 20, 21, then they should start thinking about it.
As a general policy in the school, because children might ask anything, we should consider what the policy is about, say, questions about sexual matters. Because many parents, of course, would not like their children to be receiving sex education in school. And answers to any questions about sex might be considered by parents sex education. And I think it's fairly risky to be giving children answers about questions about sex in school.
Not until they are 11 or 12. By the time they are 11 or 12, is it?
Well, I mean, the question is whether or not parents feel it's the teacher's place to be answering those questions for them. You know, and there's a lot of disagreement on that, even for teenagers. You know, there are parents who take the position that it's the parents, it's the role of the parents, and we don't want anyone else telling the children their opinions. I think certainly in primary school we should stay away from that and just say some questions it's better for you to ask your parents.
What if one child ask teacher about why the rain comes down? We can just say, how do we answer that? Because if we tell them the scientific process, they might, I think they might be confused, or else maybe they will be like not interested anymore to know about science, because it seems like quite hard to understand.
Too complex.
But you could say something like, have you ever noticed that if you leave some water in a bowl, that water will disappear? And you say, do you know where it goes? And they say, probably not. And you say, what Allah does is Allah slowly takes the water up. When there's water out somewhere, Allah slowly takes it up and puts it up in the sky. And then when He is ready, He has a way to have it come back down as rain. See, at 1 year, a standard one child could probably understand that. And they might find that kind of fascinating. And that's actually, I mean, it's true. See, what I say is true. I left out all sorts of detail. But it is true what I said.
You can say he puts it in the clouds, because I think the kids, they know about clouds.
Yeah.
They see clouds.
They know water vapors.
Yes, they know. You can say example from the steam. You know when
Yeah, and you
hot
could
water,
say,
yes.
when Allah puts it up in the skies, usually you can see it, and we call them clouds.
Yes, true.
Because my sister used to ask me about that. I tried my best to answer her. I just said, like the things you said just now. Then she asked me, how does the rain comes down? She's about 5 to 7. So because there are terms, right? I really don't know how to answer, to give the right answer. And then she just like ignore.
Not interested anymore.
Because it seems like complex to understand. It's like,
But I mean, if the child can understand this, see, you can tell them the correct answer. You can say that in the air, not only does Allah put water in the air, but He puts little bits of dust in the air. And when the water starts to collect around a little bit of dust, it gets heavier and heavier, and eventually Allah makes it heavy enough that it falls to the ground, and we call that rain. That's actually what happens.
Yeah.
So that's fairly simple and interesting to kids.
And for children as well, you can actually make them excited by saying, oh, you want to know that? Come, let's try something. Which is like Prof said, we put water in a bowl, then leave it for a few, just make sure it's very little water.
By end of the
bowl,
day.
and then the next day it will disappear.
Okay, so
Yes.
I've done that with my children. They can see the steam.
Or you could just draw. I think kids, they love it. If you just draw, they can understand it actually.
is that during the time it was Ika, and so it's quite
Well,
hard because
You cannot go so too scientific, I think. If you go too scientific,
Then at the end, I just said, okay, you will learn this later when you.
But another thing you can do, you see, to make sure the child is really interested, you can say to them, you could say maybe, look, I can answer that question, but the answer is a little bit hard. Are you really sure you want to know? You're really sure now, you know? So once they've committed that they are really, really sure, by then it seems like, whoa, there might be some mystery I get to hear. You see, so you do something to make them to focus their attention on the answer.
And then one more thing, my small sister, she is like a person who is always concerned about surroundings. She would like to know everything in detail, and she used to ask my mother everything. And my mother said to me, I have to be a good encyclopedia moving around for her. But my mother, of course, she doesn't know everything in detail to answer the right thing. But she tried her best.
See,
She's about 5 only.
can you answer to a child why the sky is blue? Can you answer to an adult why the sky is blue? Do you know why the sky is blue?
Because as far as I can say, that is because the
Reflection of the sea.
reflection of the sea. Because I know it's not cloud. The sky outside is originally dark, but then when we have light, we have sunlight reflect to the cloud. That's what makes it seems looks like blue. I'm not really sure actually.
Okay, no, that's probably not quite accurate.
Yeah, I know.
But see, it's a bit difficult one to tell kids.
But what is it?
Oh, the actual answer is the sunlight coming from the sun is actually a combination of all colors.
Reflection.
Right, so, no. It is the spectrum of all colors comes from the sun. And we perceive all the colors mixed together as white light.
Well,
But the particular chemicals in the atmosphere, they filter out all of the colors more than they filter out blue. So blue is the main color that can get through the atmosphere. So all the colors come from the sun, but all the colors but blue get blocked out by the atmosphere. That's why the sky looks blue. Now, you see, children won't, it's going to be, for a young child, the idea that white light includes all the colors is really difficult. You know, it doesn't, when you just hear it, if you don't know what it means, it doesn't seem to make sense.
We have these little prisms that break light into the colors that are spectrum. I think
So in science classes, see, we want to explain this to the children as early as they can understand. Well, that's another thing. We haven't really finished. We'll talk about that next, okay? How much to teach children, which relates to this question. But generally, I think what we have to do with the kids is find a way to give them answers that will be satisfying but will not be too difficult for them so that they are not interested. You know, I mean, basically, often children, when they ask a question when they're young, they are really looking for a simple answer. You know, and yeah, they really aren't going to appreciate a complicated answer. So if there's a simple enough answer, you give it to them. But it is fair to say to them on some things, the answer to that is so hard to understand, it's better you wait a few years, because if I tell you right now, you're not going to understand some of the words that I use. You can say something like that. Then the other thing is on how much to teach children. If you accepted the theories of the developmental psychologists like Piaget believes that there are certain stages a child goes through, and a child that hasn't reached a certain age, the developmental level, cannot learn certain things. And then in some places in the world, it's thought that you shouldn't try and teach children to read or to do numbers, simple math, too early. And I say there is no such thing, absolutely no such thing as too early. Right? The only thing that you have to do, have to consider though, is does the child want to do it? If a child is happy to learn to read at 2.5 years old, then okay to teach them to read at 2.5. But if you try and push a child, right, say a child is 4 and you want to be sure by the time they get to kindergarten they can read, and you push the child to learn to read and they don't want to do it, then you're harming them greatly. So you can teach a child anything they are happy to learn. And always the goal should be to go maybe just a tiny bit further than what their ability is at. You know, so you're constantly stretching their ability. So in some of the classes, you know, like in things like science, for some of the kids, you might be able to get into some, by standard 3, some pretty sophisticated scientific knowledge. I mean, I don't know when they teach it. Does anyone have any idea in Malaysia when they teach the, say, the structure of an atom? Structure of an atom. Nucleus. Secondary school. Now, I mean, certainly by the time I was in equivalent of standard 3, I knew the structure of an atom. So it's possible to know. I think it's possible by standard 3 there'll be children who might be capable of handling the structure of an atom.
They do ask questions about what is electricity, that kind of stuff. So from there we can build on what
How many of you know what electricity is?
We all learn at school.